The key turned with a satisfying click, and Daniel pushed open the door to their seaside rental. The rental home was a cozy cottage, its exterior washed with the weathered whites and blues of countless summers, nestled between the protective embrace of wind-sculpted dunes. "Wow," she exhaled, her voice echoing softly in the high-ceilinged living space. "It's perfect." "Wait until you see the view from the bedroom," Daniel replied with a grin that crinkled the corners of his eyes, his tone buoyant with a boyish excitement that was so rarely glimpsed amidst the steel and class of their urban life. They dragged their suitcases across the wooden floors, the rhythmic thumping marking their progress like a drumbeat towards tranquility. Evelyn flung open the windows, welcoming the chorus of waves lapping against the shore, a natural lullaby promising restorative slumber. "Let's get settled," Daniel suggested, already unzipping his luggage with efficient movements, an architect even in the mundane task of unpacking. "I want every second here to count." "Me too." Evelyn's hands worked deftly, folding and placing clothes into drawers with meticulous care. "Here's to making new memories," he said. His optimism was infectious, and for a moment, Evelyn allowed herself to be swept up in it, to imagine a world where shadows did not cling to their heels. "Daniel," she began, pausing to organize her thoughts, "do you think we can really just step away from it all? Even for just this week?" "Hey," he came to her, encircling her waist with strong, reassuring arms. "This is our time. No cases, no clients, just us." "Sounds almost too good to be true," she murmured, leaning back into his chest, feeling the solid reality of him. "Let's make it true," he insisted, planting a kiss atop her head. "Starting with dinner. I'm going to cook us something special tonight. Promise me it won't be your infamous chili," she teased, her laughter bubbling up despite the unease that never fully receded. "Scout's honor," he chuckled, releasing her to resume the dance of domesticity. They moved around each other with an instinctual choreography, filling the cottage with the essence of themselves, the unpacking transforming into a ritual of claiming space. Evelyn arranged their toiletries in the bathroom, aligning them with precision on the shelf. The mirror reflected her image back at her, green eyes bright with a hopefulness that felt foreign on her face. "Everything in its place?" Daniel called from the kitchen, the clatter of pots and pans punctuating his words. "Almost," she replied, taking one last look around the cozy room, at the soft throw blankets, the plump cushions, the novels waiting to be read on rain-soaked afternoons. She had done everything she could to create a haven within a haven. "Then come help me with the wine," he beckoned. "The perfect complement to our first night in paradise." "Coming," she said, her voice stronger than she felt. Evelyn Hart, the woman who faced down juries and swayed judges, now fought the most personal of battles, to allow peace to seep into marrow and mind. She closed the bathroom door behind her, stepping into the warmth of the kitchen, where the aroma of garlic and herbs promised a feast. Daniel stood at the stove, his movements fluid and sure, and she watched him for a moment, love mingled with an ache for the simplicity of this scene to be there forever. "Here," he said, handing her a glass, the ruby liquid catching the light. "To us, to Haven Bay, and to a week of nothing but the sound of the sea in each other's company." "To us," she echoed, clinking her glass against his, the sound sharp and clear, a harbinger of things to come. The sun was beginning to dip towards the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple as Evelyn and Daniel left the comforting enclave of their rental home. They walked hand in hand down the cobblestone streets of Haven Bay, the quaint seaside town that promised them refuge from their clamorous city existence. Evelyn felt the tension ease from her shoulders with each breath of salty air. The seashore whispered its rhythmic lullabies, punctuated by the distant cries of gulls wheeling above. The fading sunlight glinted off shop windows, casting warm, dancing reflections on the pavement. Quaint boutiques and charming cafes lined the street, their signs swinging gently in the light sea breeze. "Look at this," Daniel said, nodding towards a small art gallery whose window displayed oil paintings of the rugged coastline. He squeezed her hand, his presence a grounding force against the unsettling flutter inside her chest. "It's like someone froze time around here." She couldn't help but agree. The peace that enveloped the town was palpable, a soft blanket of serenity that seemed almost untouched by the outside world. As they ambled along, Evelyn allowed herself to be wrapped in the gentle embrace, letting her guard down bit by bit. "Isn't it beautiful?" she murmured, more to herself than to Daniel. She saw him nod out of the corner of her eye, a contented smile on his lips. Absolutely, he replied, his voice carrying an undertone of relief. Their eyes met, and for a moment, there was no need for words, their shared emotions were clear. The echo of waves mingling with the sounds of seagulls, a melodious symphony of calm that carried them into the encroaching night. The amber light of the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the quaint seaside town of Haven Bay. Evelyn and Daniel Hart stood on the porch of their vacation rental, watching the day give way to a tranquil evening. The sea breeze carried with it the scent of salt and the distant sound of waves lapping against the shore. "Can you believe this view?" Daniel said, his voice low and content as he wrapped his arms around Evelyn from behind. She leaned back into his embrace, her eyes closing for a moment. "It's like we've stepped into another world," she murmured, allowing the serenity of their surroundings to wash over her. She could feel the tension that had knotted her shoulders beginning to unravel. "Let's make every second count," Daniel suggested, placing a gentle kiss atop her head. "Agreed," she replied, turning in his arms to face him, her green eyes reflecting the last hints of daylight. Inside, the couple unpacked their bags, carefully arranging their belongings as if nesting in a new home. Daniel set about preparing dinner, humming softly to himself while Evelyn explored each room, familiarizing herself with the space that would be theirs for the week. "Smells amazing, Dan," Evelyn called out from the bedroom where she was fluffing pillows with practiced precision. "Only the best for my lady," came his cheerful response from the kitchen. "Your lady could use a glass of wine," she teased, emerging into the open-plan living area. "Coming right up," he chuckled, retrieving a bottle from the fridge. The dining table was set with an elegance that belied its temporary nature, the flicker of candlelight dancing across the silverware. They sat down to a meal of grilled salmon and fresh greens, a simple yet delicious repast that complemented the simplicity of their escape. "Cheers, to us," Daniel raised his glass, the crystal chiming sweetly against Evelyn's. "To us," she echoed, her smile genuine and wide. Each sip of the crisp white wine seemed to further soothe her city-frayed nerves. As they ate, the easy conversation flowed between them, intermingled with laughter and shared dreams. Stories of the locals' charming anecdotes replayed in Evelyn's mind, giving her a sense of belonging she hadn't realized she was missing. Suddenly, a sharp knock at the door sliced through their mirth. Daniel glanced at Evelyn, a puzzled frown creasing his brow. "Expecting anyone?" he asked, already rising from his chair. "Of course not," Evelyn replied, her lawyer's instinct kicking in, alert despite the calm. Daniel approached the door, peering through the peephole before opening it to reveal nothing. The porch was empty, save for the fading twilight and the occasional flutter of a leaf in the breeze. "Strange," he muttered, stepping outside to look around, but the quiet street offered no clues. Shrugging, he closed the door, securing it once again. "Must have been kids playing a prank," he suggested as he returned to the table. "Maybe," Evelyn agreed, though her thoughts lingered on the odd occurrence. She pushed aside the niggle of doubt, reminding herself that the purpose of this trip was to relax. They resumed their meal, the unexpected interruption seemingly forgotten, until a chill ran down Evelyn's spine, the hairs on her neck standing on end. Slowly, she lifted her gaze from her plate to the kitchen. There, silhouetted against the dim light, stood a tall figure. The unmistakable outline of Mickey Mouse ears adorned the person's head, a mask hiding any human expression. But it was the slow, deliberate wave and the gleam of metal in the figure's hand that paralyzed her. "A gun. Daniel." Evelyn's voice was barely a whisper, her fork clattering against her plate as she pointed towards the window. Daniel turned, and his usual calm demeanor shattered. "What the?" He stood abruptly, knocking his chair to the floor. "Hello there." The voice was muffled by the mask but carried a twisted cheerfulness that made Evelyn's blood run cold. "Stay away from us," Daniel shouted, moving instinctively to shield his wife. "Ah, don't be rude, Danny boy. I just came to join the party," Mickey taunted, his finger caressing the trigger with a lover's touch. Evelyn's heart pounded in her chest, her mind racing. They were isolated, alone, and this masked intruder held all the power. Her survival instincts surged to the forefront, and she scanned the room for anything that could be used as a weapon or means of escape. "Who are you? What do you want?" Daniel demanded, his voice laced with a fear that matched Evelyn's own. Questions, so many questions," Mickey sang mockingly. "You'll find out soon enough." Evelyn's mind searched frantically for an exit, any way she could escape this madman. But deep down, she knew there was no escape from the chaos that had just invaded their sanctuary. The twine bit into Daniel's wrists, the rough fibers a stark contrast to the softness of their rented beach house's decor, as Mickey forced Evelyn to tie up her defenseless husband. His face etched with grim lines of pain and fear. Mickey paced before them, an incongruous figure with large cartoonish ears silhouetted against the pastel wallpaper. "Please," Evelyn's voice trembled, "why are you doing this to us?" Mickey stopped pacing, tilting his head as if genuinely considering the question. He leaned in close, the mask's hollow eyes meeting hers. "I was bored," he breathed out, the words dripping with a nonchalance that chilled her to the bone. Daniel roared, a guttural sound of pure rage and frustration, straining against his bindings. Mickey turned to him, amused by the display of futile strength. With deliberate slowness, he drew a knife from his belt, the military-style blade catching the dying sunlight streaming through the window. Mickey dropped the knife on the floor, demanding Evelyn pick it up. "Please," Evelyn begged, "I don't want to do this, just please leave us alone." The evil behind the maniacal laugh that erupted from behind the mask could be felt more than it could be heard. "Stop screwing around and pick up the knife, or I'll shoot him," Mickey said in a low growl. Evelyn fell to the ground in tears, screaming, "No, I won't. Just leave us alone." The next moment was a blur, as Mickey moved with an unhuman-like speed. "Dan, no." Evelyn's plea went unheeded as Mickey descended upon him, the sound of tearing fabric and flesh merging in a vile symphony, as the knife sliced into Daniel's flesh, over and over again. "Stop. Please, stop it." Her cries filled the room, mingling with Daniel's stifled groans. Mickey worked with the precision of an artist, his every move calculated to inflict maximum damage while keeping his victim conscious. The air grew thick with a metallic tang of blood. Evelyn's mind raced, trying to comprehend the horror unfolding before her. They were supposed to be safe here, away from the noise and danger of the city, not trapped in a macabre dance with death. "Look at me, Dan," she pleaded, desperate to keep him conscious. Her heart shattered as she saw the light fading from his eyes, that brilliant intellect dimming under Mickey's relentless assault. Through her terror, a glimmer of hope sparked as she noticed the back door slightly open. Seizing her chance when his focus was entirely on Daniel, she surged to her feet, stumbling towards the door. Mickey's head snapped up, but he was too late. She burst outside, her bare feet slapping against the cool pavement as she ran. It almost seemed too easy. "Help me. Somebody, please help me." Her voice was hoarse, terror lending it volume as she sprinted towards the flicker of headlights in the distance. The car lights grew brighter, casting long shadows across the road until they enveloped her in a wash of white. The vehicle skidded to a halt, the police cruiser's distinct markings offering a momentary sense of relief. Officer Mitchell stepped out, his face a blend of concern and authority. "Ma'am, what's happening?" The officer's voice was steady, the badge on his chest reflecting the moonlight. "He killed my husband," Evelyn gasped between sobs, her story tumbling out in broken fragments as she clung to the officer's uniform. "A man in a Mickey Mouse mask." "Stay calm," the officer said, guiding her to the safety of the cruiser. "You're safe now. We're going to get you some help." "Everything's going to be okay," the officer reassured Evelyn, his voice a soothing balm amidst the cacophony of wailing sirens and flashing red and blue lights. Evelyn quivered in the backseat of the cruiser, her hands trembling like aspen leaves in a storm. Her mind was a jumble of shattered thoughts, each one pierced by the image of Daniel's lifeless body and the haunting echo of Mickey's laughter. As the engine hummed and the tires crunched over the gravel, Evelyn's gaze fixed on the ring of keys dangling from the ignition. Each key was a promise of safety, escape, justice, but they felt so far out of reach. "Will you catch him?" she whispered, more to herself than to officer. "We're going to do everything we can," he replied, casting a glance at Evelyn through the rearview mirror. His eyes were steady, but something flickered behind them, a hint of doubt, perhaps, or fear. The cruiser pulled up to the beach house, its quaint charm now marred by an aura of malice. The front door hung open, like a gaping mouth whispering secrets of the horror it held within. "Stay here," the officer instructed as he stepped out, unholstering his gun with practiced ease. Evelyn clutched at her chest, feeling her heartbeat pounding against her ribs, a caged bird desperate for flight. She watched through the car window, as the officer's shadow elongated by the cruiser's headlights, crossed the threshold into the house. Moments later, The officer re-emerged, his composure like cracked glass. "We found your husband," he called out, his voice strained. "I'm so sorry." "Is he?" Evelyn couldn't finish the question. The answer hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. "Please step out of the vehicle, ma'am," Officer Mitchell said as he opened the door for Evelyn, her blonde hair glinting in the moonlight. Evelyn obeyed, her legs buckling beneath her as if her bones had turned to ash. They led her back into the house, where the once cozy living room was now a tableau of tragedy. Daniel lay there, bound in silence forever. Flashes from the crime scene photographer's camera painted the room in stark, intermittent illumination, each burst revealing glimpses of the nightmare. "Ma'am, you'll need to come with us for questioning," the officer stated, his voice devoid of emotion. "Questioning?" Evelyn's voice broke, her words cracking like thin ice. "You think standard procedure," he interrupted gently, reaching out to guide Evelyn's arms behind her back. "We'll clear this up at the station." "Clear this up?" Evelyn's thoughts screamed inside her head. Clear up the blood that stained her memories? The terror that clawed at her consciousness? "Watch your head," Anne said as she helped Evelyn into the back seat once more. The click of the door closing sounded like the final note of a dirge, sealing Evelyn within a cold, metal tomb. "Please," Evelyn begged, her plea muffled by the partition separating her from the officers in the front. "I didn't do anything." "We know, ma'am." "Just try to stay calm," he replied, though his voice seemed distant, carried away by the night breeze. As the cruiser departed, the beach house receded into darkness, taking with it the last vestiges of refuge Evelyn and Daniel had sought. Only the taunting waves remained, whispering across the shore, indifferent to the human agony that unfolded beside their eternal ebb and flow. The gavel struck with a finality that echoed off the courtroom walls, reverberating through Evelyn's core. "We find the defendant, Evelyn Carmichael, guilty of the murder of Daniel Carmichael." Evelyn's heart plummeted, the sound drowning out the subsequent words that condemned her to life imprisonment. Her mind whirred, a carousel of disbelief and horror spinning uncontrollably. "This can't be happening. Daniel, I'm so sorry." "Order. Order in the court." The judge's voice sliced through the clamor of the onlookers. A frenzy of reporters scribbled furiously on their notepads, their pens scratching like rats in a wall. "Mrs. Carmichael, do you have anything to say before sentencing is passed?" the judge asked, peering down at her over his spectacles. Her throat was sandpaper as she stood unsteadily. "Your Honor, I didn't kill my husband." "That man, the one with the mask," words failed her, strangled by the tightness gripping her chest. "Quite enough," the judge interrupted, a touch of impatience in his tone. "Sentencing will proceed. This court is adjourned." As they led her away in cuffs, each step felt like wading through a viscous sea of dread. "They don't believe me. Nobody believes me." The sun had long set when Officer Mitchell let himself into his modest home, the weight of the day heavy upon his shoulders. He twisted the cap off a beer bottle and drew in a deep breath before turning toward the living room. "Hey, Johnny," she called out to his brother, who sat absorbed in the local paper. "Anything new?" "Same old," Johnny grumbled without looking up. The newsprint cast shadows across his face, hiding his expression. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, holding out the second beer and offering. As he took it, his hand brushed against something on the nightstand, a Mickey Mouse mask, its hollow eyes watching them silently. "Thanks, bro," he said, finally glancing up with an inscrutable look. "Sure," he replied, sinking onto the opposite end of the couch. He tried not to focus on the mask, the way it seemed to grin at her from its perch. "That thing always gives me the willies," he exclaimed. "Why don't you get another mask, something less creepy?" Just then, the front door creaked open and Judge Harlan stepped inside, the smell of Chinese takeout wafting in with him. "Hope you two are hungry," he announced jovially. "Starving," Johnny said, a smile creeping onto his lips as he folded the newspaper and set it aside. "Great verdict today," the judge complimented, setting the food down on the coffee table. "Justice," Officer Mitchell echoed, the word tasting bittersweet on his tongue. "Here's to another closed chapter," Johnny said, raising his beer in a toast. The three of them clinked bottles, the hollow sound mingling with their laughter, which filled the room, warm and unfettered. Please like and subscribe for more.